Al Silverstein is on board. Vice Chair Barbara Wall is here with us, and Secretary Robert Poole. So we have a quorum. So we're going to open the meeting, and the first thing we're going to do is ask for approval of the September 15th, 2022 meeting minutes. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
I agree.
Barbara makes a motion. I'll second the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right. Aye. And Barbara says aye. So it's approved. Mr. Executive Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate that. Okay, since our last meeting in September, there have been 13 people charged in 10 different incidents of a variety of alcohol and tobacco violations. These occurred in Garrett County, Prince George's County, Anne Arundel, Montgomery, and Worcester counties, and Baltimore City. The totals of our seizures were 45,659 pieces of OTP. It's very significant. 944 packages of contraband cigarettes, and 53 containers of spirits. Regarding our licenses and permits since our last meeting, we've issued 58 new licenses or permits, and October 31st is the date on which all of our general permits expire and must be renewed for November 1st. So far, of all the licenses, all the permits that are set to expire at the end of the month, 938 have renewed, 3,841 are pending renewal. Also, in the interim since our last meeting, we held our alcohol summit, and I know several of you were there. Mr. Chair and Mr. Secretary was there, as well as Mr. Hawk was there as well. So appreciate everybody attending that. Just to give you a sense of how successful we think it was, we had about 115 attendees. And what's really significant about that is this thing was scheduled to last for 2 hours. It lasted for nearly 2 hours. And we had an overwhelming majority of people stay on for the whole 2 hours. So I think there was a lot of interest. I think we hit the mark, and we have a lot of work to do now because this group gave us a lot of things to consider. We're boiling that down into a few topics that we think we can actually do some work on. And we're going to publish within the next 2 weeks. We'll publish that list of topics, and we will kind of solidify the selection of the work group moving forward. I expect that to be around maybe 10 to 12 people. Hopefully that's manageable, small enough that we can actually get something done. And it'll be a cross section of representation amongst the various industries, regulators, and then a couple of at-large positions for people who aren't necessarily affiliated in some other way, but have a real desire to have some input or at least hear what's going on. The last thing I'd like to report on are agency reports, and specifically this is one that the Maryland General Assembly mandated that the Maryland Medical Cannabis Commission and the Alcohol and Tobacco Commission get together and put together a report that combines our two agencies. Now, I'm going to do something that I haven't done in over a year or more, and that is try to share my screen. Bear with me, and I'm apologizing in advance for how I'm sure I'm not going to get it right, but I'm going to try. Because what I'd like to show you is just this past Tuesday evening, a work group of the Maryland General Assembly got together to start work on cannabis, just not just the medical cannabis element, but consideration of adult use cannabis should the population of Maryland approve House Bill 1 in the referendum on specifically on adult use. So bear with me. I'm going to give this a shot. I make no promises. Oh, wow. Nope. That was our alcohol summit. Let's see. Again, bear with me, please, as I continue to do that. Hey, this is it. So how about that? Okay, I'll go through some of these rather quickly because all the slides aren't going to be that important. Yeah, I've highlighted a couple.
Don't see your screen.
Oh, I'm sorry. I stopped sharing. Wow, that's a shame. That makes sense because it seemed to work.
Hey, Jeff, you almost had it, brother.
I'm going to give it another shot. That's why I said it was almost a guarantee that this wasn't going to work quite right for me.
Hey, at least you're trying.
I'm trying. Let's see if this one does it. How about now?
Yes.
You're on.
I accidentally got it. Okay, great. I'm not sure if I can get back out of it again, so it might be up for a while. So I'm going to go through it. It's only a handful of slides to begin with, but I'm going to go through a few of them just to give you a quick comment on it, and then I'll spend some time toward the end, which is where the results are. So first thing is, in House Bill 1, in the sections after, in the uncodified language of House Bill 1, the General Assembly said it's the intent of the General Assembly that should the citizens of Maryland pass the referendum, that the executive director of the office of the executive director of the Alcohol Tobacco Commission will be the successor agency, which means in some manner the Medical Cannabis Commission, as we know it, won't exist, and it'll be all part of the auspices of the Alcohol and Tobacco Commission. These next few slides, I'm not going to go into any detail. This is just how we got formulated and how we're comprised and our budget size, our number of staff, where we live. This is the same thing for the Cannabis Commission. Again, I'm more than happy to share this offline with anybody who wants it, but this just gives the same kind of information about the Cannabis Commission, how they're formed, what their budget is, what their size is. One thing I thought was important, though, they have 77 positions, 77 employees. But of those 77, only 31 are pinned employees, permanent employees with benefits and guaranteed to be there every day. 46 are contractual positions. And overwhelmingly, the large majority of that are the enforcement compliance inspectors, ones who go out and inspect all of these locations that are growing and processing and dispensing product. We kind of say later on that might be a little bit of a problem going forward, because they have the funding for these. These aren't pins, and they might need some help in trying to get these converted to pins at some point. A little bit of the background: once this bill passed and the General Assembly went into sine die, so this thing was going to happen. The MMCC and us got together. We started in April. We've met 12 times. The most recent and last time was a week ago this past Tuesday to finalize the report. We knew we had until the end of this calendar year, rather, to get the report done. But when the General Assembly indicated that they were going to meet sooner, which was just this past Tuesday evening, and really wanted to talk about the report, we kind of felt under pressure to get this thing out in advance of our deadline. So I'm glad we started working on it early. We took into consideration all of the people, all of the equipment, all of the needs of both agencies. We looked at how this could have been done before. Actually, we had a great example, and that was not when agencies were combined, but when the ATC was formed and pulled from the comptroller, the manner in which those employees were pulled from the comptroller and to the ACC and trying to guarantee them or some security about their jobs really gave us a good model to follow. So that's largely what we did. And we've reviewed other cannabis policies in other jurisdictions. And Mr. Chair, I know you were part of this. You attended some of our meetings, so you have some sense of how this went on. Just a big roundtable with the top level people in both agencies. We talked specifically. We already talked to Washington at length about how they operate, and we have a meeting scheduled to talk to Oregon. And what makes those two unique to us or beneficial to us is both of them also regulate alcohol, not tobacco, but alcohol. So they're very similar to what we could be doing. Report recommendations, without reading all the slides, we suggest, first of all, that this merger take place, if the General Assembly continues to determine that's what they want, on or after July 1st. So that gives us a little bit of runway to get things set up. But on or after July 1st, we think it should take place. That we are confident we can make the transfer using the model that we used in creating the ATC. We can use that same model to move all of the employees from the MMCC to the ATC without any loss of anything. All of their benefits, pensions, salaries, all remain intact. Where we can, one of the mandates was to try and find like operations and increase efficiencies. There's a lot of things we do that are very, very different and can't be merged, at least not at this point, but there are some things that we can merge. So we're going to take those administrative operational functions and put them together in maybe another new division, but put them together where they can serve both entities in one. For the time being, we will keep our office space in the Treasury Building in Annapolis, and the MMCC will keep its office space, which is in an office park in Linthicum, very close to the airport. It's a nice facility, but they don't have a whole lot of extra room. It's a private business that they're renting out, our office building that they're renting out space in. And ours, of course, is a government building, and we just don't have enough space in either for us to join. So for the time, we stay where we are. And the last point was one of the mandates also that essentially more of this is going to deal more with the MMCC, but it could be both of us. Any letterhead that's already printed, envelopes, business cards, anything that has either of our names, the commission's names on it, continue to use that product until it's all gone. Don't order new stuff if you're going to merge, but don't get rid of the old stuff. Use it until it's gone just to save a few dollars. This is what we propose our org chart would look like. Now, right now, the executive director's position, which is mine, is at the top, of course. On the left, that represents what we currently have that we call our Field Enforcement Division. Bill George, who you know, runs that. So that's going to remain largely intact as it is. Moving two over to the right, Legal and Legislative Division, that's Tom Akris's division. That stays largely intact as is, except we're going to take the Assistant Attorneys General that currently work for the Cannabis Commission and move them into Tom's area. It just seems to make sense that while they don't work for any of us, they work for the Attorney General, but they are assigned as counsel to this agency. We find that Tom and they will be able to speak apples to apples, and that's probably the best place for them to reside. Taking one step to the left from that, public health and business operations, that's going to serve two things really. One of our big mandate of educating the public, teaching public health concerns and issues about now all three of these products, and conducting our research and our studies, as well as our business operations. It's going to take procurement, HR, finance, communications, and it will merge them all into one area and one division. And that's really where our area of being able to start combining these two distinct agencies will take place. So it'll be within that area that a lot of the combination first represents itself. Moving all the way to the right, this is a new division, the Cannabis Regulatory and Enforcement Division. That division will be essentially the exact structure of I'm sorry, I just overheard something, but that division will essentially be the Cannabis Commission as it currently exists, moved in its entirety to this new division, with the exception of those people that we could put in the Public Health and Business Operations Division. The thought here being, it's going to take a while to figure all this out. We don't know what public policy is going to look like as the Maryland General Assembly envisions it, starting on July 1st. We'll have a couple of months, maybe, idea of what they're looking at, but we really don't know what it's going to look like. And we thought it was most important that the difference between June 30, 2023 and July 1st, 2023 consumers / providers and manufacturers is there is no difference, that they don't see a difference in operation. They'll be dealing with the same people from one day into the next. We may see a few different changes internally. They won't see it outside. And we think this structure in this chart, as represented by this chart, will give us, we're hoping an 18 to 24 month period of time that we can digest what the General Assembly has passed, start to implement it little by little until we have a fully operational adult use cannabis program, if that's the route they go in. But we think this allows us day one, uninterrupted service to the people who would be impacted, and then gives us a structure that we can live within and work within moving forward if we have to develop some type of adult use program. So we talked about the merge functions, those 5 functions, and I won't spend a lot of time on this, but I just wanted to draw your attention to how the ATCs comes out the winner here. For communications, we don't have anybody who does communications for us. It's ad hoc. If there's somebody who has particular knowledge, they're asked to speak on behalf of the agency. The Cannabis Commission has 3 full-time people working on communications. HR, we have 1 person, and I'm going to qualify that with another, well, I'm going to qualify it now. We have 1 person, but she doesn't do just HR. She also is our budget and finance person, and she also is our procurement person. And fortunately, she's very good and very sharp and can handle that. But all of that is commensurate with this portion over here where we have an MOU with the Comptroller's Office. So on our end, it's Elsie Bateman who does this work for us. Elsie packages our HR and finance and procurement issues into a nice little package with a bow on it, and then gives it to the Comptroller's Office, who completes the work. And they're absolutely necessary and vital. So I'm not discounting what they do, but Elsie takes it as far as we possibly can. So their work is minimal, but nonetheless, we can't do it without the help of the Comptroller's Office. And then we have 2 people at the bottom, we do, who are involved in the research and then subsequently generating many of our reports. So the public health, the research, the reports come from 2 people, where the Cannabis Commission has a total of 10 to do all of this. So we're really going to benefit a lot when we can combine our agencies, combine these functions to serve the greater unit, the greater commission that this will become. This is a win for us. It's a hold even for the Cannabis Commission. It's a win for us. All of that depends on us keeping our MOU in place with the Comptroller-elect, now whomever that will be, and or continuing to get help from Maryland Department of Health, which is what the Cannabis Commission gets currently. So all of that hinges. If we're not able to continue our MOU, if the Department of Health can't help us, then we're going to have to start seeking some additional resources to create our own administrative units that are completely self-reliant. There are a handful of areas that we just could not figure out a way to combine. One of them is enforcement for the time being. I mentioned that. As you know, Bill George runs the Field Enforcement Division. That has all the enforcement agents. It also has all of our administrative functions, our licensing operation. It's everything. Going to the field enforcement agents who reside in the Field Enforcement Bureau. They're all sworn agents, meaning they're sworn police officers. They have powers of doing the inspections and all that anybody can do, and they have powers of arrest and charging people and executing search warrants. In the Medical Cannabis Commission, they don't have that. All of their investigators are civilian inspectors. They do not have police powers or authorities. They're very limited in what they can do. So they may need, we may need to use some of our sworn officers to help in some instances with the Cannabis Commission. But the truth is, it's an entirely different type of work. Early on in our debate, early on in our meeting from April into the midsummer, late summer even, I'd say up until about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I think we all kind of thought that the sworn officers would be able to slip into the enforcement side of cannabis pretty easily. We just have to do a little training and it might work. Well, when we met with Washington, who's been doing this now for about a decade, we didn't even ask them about that element of it because we pretty much understood and thought we knew how we were going to go with it. But what they said was on their own, after their presentation, on their own, they said, something else we kind of messed up on. We thought our one enforcement agent could do all of our work, our alcohol and our cannabis. And within 2 years, we found out that was completely flawed thinking and it didn't work at all. So they ended up creating 2 branches, an alcohol branch and a cannabis branch, completely different types of inspections, completely different types of expectations and enforcement. So that's something we at least need to think about. Now that they've mentioned it to us, we'll be very aware to look into that in detail. But that might be an area where we remain separate. We will remain separate on day one, on July 1st, if that's the date that we would assume that responsibility. And moving forward, it may stay that way. Laboratories, we have very little need for lab. When we do need it, we use the Comptroller's Motor Fuel Lab in Jessup. They do motor fuel testing. They can do alcohol testing. They have done that for us. Most recently over this summer, we spent a lot of weekend evenings in Fells Point, frequently finding people who were selling different products in unmarked manner. And we would seize that product and test it for alcohol, finding that it would charge them with selling without a license. So that laboratory helps us with that. The MMCC uses a variety of private labs to do most of their testing, and they've now received permission to move forward with creating their own reference laboratory in that same office building, Mr. Chair, the one you know exists. In that same office building on the first floor, they've got several thousand square feet that they're going to build out their own lab. The purpose of that lab may be to do some of the testing of cannabis, but even more so, it's to make certain that the individual labs, the private labs that are doing testing, they're being checked. This lab will check those labs to make sure it's all being done properly. Relative to IT, currently the ATC uses the Comptroller's office, as many of you know, and we use Comptroller's IT, Comptroller's website, and a lot of that is because we have significant access to the Comptroller's databases. And in that, they'd like to keep those firewalls of protection built so that if we're going to be using anything else, like their licensing system, which we are using for alcohol now, they want to make sure that we're all protected behind that firewall. So for the time being, we remain IT-wise with the Comptroller. The Cannabis Commission, conversely, is with the Department of Information Technologies, or called DOIT, also known as DOIT, and they get their work done through DOIT. For the time being, we're going to just leave those as separate entities. We'll deal with the Comptroller, they'll deal with DOIT, and then in our 18 to 24 month work, we'll figure out a way if merging is appropriate, and if so, how we should best do it. And then lastly, quality assurance isn't really an issue for us. Quality assurance is more like a place for patients, customers, providers to call for cannabis-related problems and concerns. So they have a call center and they direct that from there. That's really not something that is anything we have to deal with. And that's the end of what we presented to the Cannabis Commission. Let's see if I can get back into this now. If I can stop sharing. Yes. Okay. Forgive me for that, but that's kind of what we presented to the General Assembly work group last Tuesday, and that is an outline, a sketch for you guys of what this report's going to contain, what we were obligated to do, what the report's going to contain, and you will get copies of the report. The status right now is it's being printed. We are waiting. I have to wait for the printing to be done so we can get the appropriate copies to the presiding officers of the General Assembly, the necessary required copies to the Department of Legislative Services, and I'll make sure you get copies just about the same time. I just don't want to put out anything electronic that can float around until we've got our printed copies and have met our obligation to submit them as required. So they'll be out to you guys shortly as well. You'll all receive an electronic copy very shortly. Mr. Chairman, thanks for indulging me for that. The kind of a long report today, but I wanted to make sure we went over the cannabis stuff since we're just a couple of weeks away from whether or not we'll be dealing with it.
Thank you. I did have the opportunity to sit in on a session, and I was very impressed with the professionalism of our staff and their staff, and the deliberations that they used in trying to come up with a good mix and how to mesh things. And hopefully the legislature will accept it and move forward with it. Next, we have the MDH Deputy Director report.
Hi, everyone. It's Dana Moncrief. For some reason, my camera's not working. It said only certain participants can share video. So I guess that's not me right now. Oh, wait, now it's been enabled. Hold on. So I just wanted to provide an update. You know, we had a great, there I am. We had a great meeting with Jeff and his team last week. And just really were able to talk through several of the inspections and enforcement issues with tobacco and tobacco retailers. So really appreciate all their time, and we're definitely going to be partnering moving forward as well. So I thought, if it's okay, and hopefully I'm not repeating things that people already know, but I wanted to give just a very brief background as far as how the inspections are structured through the Department of Health. So we have 3 levels of inspections. One is the FDA, one is SINAR, and one is at the local health department level. The FDA, I had talked about, I think at a previous meeting. We have a contract with the FDA, Center for Tobacco Products, to conduct enforcement inspections across the state. There's very specific requirements with this contract and provisions that we have to follow. Most states do have these contracts through the FDA. And we have a team of commissioned federal officers that go out and conduct these inspections with underage purchasers. The SINAR program, that's at the state level. So that's actually linked to the Behavioral Health Administration Substance Use Prevention and Treatment Block Grant funding. That is received through the Federal Substance Abuse and Mental Health Administration. And as part of that funding, there's something called the SINAR provision. So that's actually named after a senator from the 90s. And linked to this funding, they added this provision that all states receiving these dollars have to conduct randomized unannounced inspections statewide. And if it's found that 20% or more of retailers are illegally selling tobacco to minors, we could lose up to 10% of that block grant funding. And certainly we don't want to lose that funding as it does go to prevention and treatment of substance use. And then finally, we have the local health department. So every local health department receives funding from the Maryland Department of Health. They conduct enforcement inspections as well as educational visits. They work with local law enforcement or their own local health department staff, or even cadets go out and conduct the inspections. This year for FY23, if a jurisdiction has less than 100 retailers, they're required to do 2 inspections as well as educational visits. If it's 100 or more, they're required to do 1 enforcement visit as well as educational visits. As part of this and as part of our partnership with the ATC, if retailers are found to have been in violation of an inspection more than once, they are referred to the ATC for a hearing. And from that, it can be determined if a license can be suspended or revoked. So because of COVID, there have been delays, of course, in being in the field. We are getting back out there. I know Jeff said he and his team, the Field Enforcement Division, are also back out doing inspections. But I wanted to bring to the attention of this group of what we are hearing from the local health departments and hearing in the field. Both for our FDA inspectors as well as the local health departments, we are hearing that violation rates are high. Our FDA chief actually said this is probably the highest he's seen in many years. So we really need to get back out there, educate retailers about the laws, of course, and help them with the education to be able to follow and comply during any type of inspection. there is confusion out in the field with retailers regarding the flavored electronic smoking devices or vapes. As you know, I'm sure the FDA had passed a law a couple years ago banning the sale of flavored pod-based devices, and that's for all flavors except tobacco and menthol. The comptroller and the ATC stepped in and expanded that because there was a loophole as far the ATC is able to enforce that they, no products, closed products, disposal products can be sold in flavors, again, other than tobacco or menthol. So there is some confusion out in the retail environment. We actually just got something yesterday from one of our local health departments showing a retailer selling orange soda puff bars, which are disposable. So, we are going to provide some additional education. We have our educational tools, 21 or none campaign and retailer materials. So we are going to be adding some more information about flavors and what can and can't be sold. And also going to work with Jeff and his team to put all this information into the bulletin that goes out through his office. Again, reminding people, A, that we're out there checking, and B, like, this is a new provision that we have to follow. And so really, again, certainly asking everyone here too, if you're working with retailers, please remind them of these laws. And I can share in the chat here the website that we have that has all of our materials as well. So that again is something important that I thought I wanted to bring up to the group here, and also just put a plug. If anyone knows of any underage purchasers that would like to assist our officers, please pass along their names to me. And there's a whole interview process, and that's for those ages 16 to 20. So those are my updates. I don't know if anyone had any questions or suggestions, but I just wanted to make sure everyone was aware of what's going on.
Thank you, Dana.
I do have a question, if I may, Mr. Chair. Just simply this: these underage consumers that you're trying to recruit to help you in your investigations, do they get paid, or is it
Yes.
Is it volunteer?
No. They get paid. It's a little above minimum wage, I think.
Okay.
But we are looking even at that, should we increase it or not. But yes, they do get paid position, contractual position through the department.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, do we have any new business to discuss today? Okay, if not, I'd make a motion for adjournment. I need a second, please.
I second it.
All right, Mr. Poole. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
And I see Ms. Wall has come in on the chat. So we close the session. We thank everybody for participating. Look forward to seeing you next month.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you all.